Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Oh, Tony, it's like you feel like we don't have a ton to talk about the Ohio State Youngstown State game and are just sort of padding time. Like writing, we're going to change the margins on this essay and squeeze them in a little bit. Maybe, you know what this needs, Tony? 1.5 spaces between lines this episode. Yes, it is the Ohio State Youngstown State rewatch. There was some stuff to take away from watching the game on TV after seeing it in person, but I don't know that my opinion on anything materially changed after watching it again.
Did I ever tell you about the time I had a cousin who was like got in trouble, so he had to write a 500 word essay about God, and he just wrote God 500 times.
Where did he get in trouble? This happened.
It may have been catechism.
Okay, so yes, so this was a school. So this was not a school essay. I was wondering if this was. Yeah. Well, I mean, that is one of those like technically true, which is the best kind of true situations where you did ask me to do this, and you asked me to. I have ticked all the boxes. You didn't ask me for a coherent narrative, so
at least he didn't finish with like 498 words of God and then add the end like we all would do. That's how you get to the final 2 words, the end, on your essays. Perhaps, if I remember, we will end the show with the end. But welcome to our Tuesday rewatch of the Ohio State game from the previous Saturday. That, of course, was Ohio State's 35-7 win over Youngstown State, a game where not only do you learn a ton watching live, but you learn even more watching a second time. And wow, Tom, I would let you go first because I have plenty of notes. But what did you learn? What was something that you took away from this game?
Well, I guess the first thing I'd want to talk about is the safety position, because where I am on the field, I'm generally almost always shooting with Ohio State coming towards me. So with the Ohio State offense and defense coming towards me, because you want pictures of the guys' faces, right? So the safeties are generally the furthest people away on the field, and there are a lot of large bodies between me and them. So unless you get a play out in space, the safeties are more of a rumor to me than just about anything else during the course of the game for the most part. So I was kind of like vaguely aware that I knew Malik Hartford started the game. I have a bunch of pictures of Malik Hartford starting the game. And then at some point you just sort of stopped seeing Malik Hartford, and it was like, is he hurt? No, he doesn't appear to be hurt. So what happened there? And what happened there was, he's a true freshman and looked like he made some mistakes on that first drive. It looked like there's one play where he was coming up in run support and didn't get the guy on the ground before, and the guy picked up, I think, a first down. The long pass play where they, the outside and slot receivers kind of crossed that Cam Martinez was on coverage. It looked like Hartford may have, I don't know what the coverage is, and we haven't talked to Ross Fulton to tell me what the coverage was. So, maybe he was in the right spot, but getting yanked off the field felt like you should probably have been deeper than the deepest guy on that side of the field, and the deepest guy on that side of the field was not the guy he was on. So it feels like there were some freshman mistakes, which every time we've talked about him and every freshman, it's that's amazing that he's out there this early in his career. There are going to be mistakes because that's what freshmen do. That does not reflect negatively on him in any way, but it feels like, okay, if Josh Proctor is back and healthy this week, he was a game time decision. He was listed as questionable, I think, last week. If he's back and healthy this week, it feels to me like he's probably your starter there.
I also had written something down about Malik Hartford, and I think it was his last play from scrimmage, which was Youngstown State's touchdown. It was the quarterback keeper with the blocker. If you watch the play, Malik Hartford is obviously the free safety there. Tommy Eichenberg takes the middle and like runs through the middle, and then Malik Hartford follows him, basically trying to stuff the run up the middle and leaving nobody even for the running back to block on the left side. And like both the running back who was a blocker and the quarterback with the ball were untouched, and there was nobody there. And to me, if I'm looking at it, that seems like if I want to put 2 and 2 together, Malik Hartford not playing any longer after that. And he did play He was on the point after attempt on that one, so I don't think it was necessarily an injury. There may be, but based on that first drive, it seemed like he got pulled based, especially with that last play. I have to assume that was part of his duty, but we'll talk to Jim Knowles at some point, and he won't throw anybody under the bus. He'll be well, that was my fault. That was my call. I'll take responsibility for that. But yes, true freshman. Everybody's been high on him. I don't think this is going to change the trajectory or the anticipation, but we have seen Perry Eliano as that safeties coach does have a short leash. If you mess up, we saw that with Josh Proctor last year against Notre Dame. It took one play and then he was out for basically the rest of that game. So this is something that we'll watch, and we'll see how things go as they move forward, as they get healthier with Josh Proctor. And again, second game for a true freshman. It is what it is.
Yeah, and there's going to be a learning curve there, and he's got plenty of time. And it wasn't, Proctor was pretty solid the first week. I'm going to be very interested to see if it is Proctor this week, how he holds up against a more pass-heavy offense in Western Kentucky. That feels like, if he's not 100% yet, you might see plays where it's like, that wasn't great for him. But if he's healthy and he plays well in those kinds of situations, that would be a big step forward for him, because it has always felt like that's sort of when he has struggled. That has sort of been where he has struggled, is stuff going over his head, or just making the wrong choice when he's 15 yards from the line of scrimmage. So that's going to be maybe one of the more interesting things to watch this upcoming week.
Another thing to watch this week as it relates to the passing game is something we saw this past week against Youngstown State with Sonny Styles coming in and out of the game based on passing downs. And I'm going to be very interested to see how they handle this, because most downs are passing downs for Western Kentucky. And if you're taking Sonny off the field in favor of, we're going to assume, Jordan Hancock, and at times it'll be Cam Martinez, you're taking him off the field on passing downs, how much is he going to play against Western Kentucky? And at some point, I think you have to let him defend that stuff and see if he can handle it. I know they talk as if he can, but then they showed us against Youngstown State, of all people, that I don't know if we're totally sure that we want him doing that. And I think that would have been the opportunity to find out, especially when the alternative ends up giving up a long play that led to a touchdown drive for Youngstown State. So I want to, we didn't see it this past week necessarily, him as a actual slot defending nickel. I'm wondering if we see how much we see him, or if it's in a different role, some other type of role. They're trying to maneuver some things, but I'm wondering where he fits in against a pass heavy attack.
Well, it does feel like they're using him more like a Sam linebacker than a nickel safety right now, where he's playing close to the line of scrimmage a lot. And I have a note about that in just a minute, but they're pulling him off the field in, obvious passing downs. When it's 3rd and 9, he's not out there, because that's when you would pull your Sam linebacker and put in your nickel. So, this is something that we talked about over the course of the summer, and there were people in the comments wondering why I was hating on Sonny Styles. And it was like, I haven't seen him cover a slot receiver yet in space. I just want to see that. Like, they're talking as if they think he can do that. And sure, I want to see it before I kind of put the, thumbs up stamp of approval on it. And the fact that we still haven't seen it makes me think that maybe they're not as comfortable with it as they have sort of presented. It's, the watch what I do, not listen to what I say kind of situations. And what they're doing sort of suggests that they're not totally comfortable with that yet. And maybe he gets, more comfortable with that during the course of the season. He's certainly fast. He's certainly shifty. You've seen him go sideline to sideline before, but covering the little 5'10" shifty little slot dude, that is a challenge that is not something you would typically put to someone who is 6'3", 6'4", whatever he is, and 220, 230 pounds. That's something you put your slot corner, who's also 5'10" and 185 pounds, on that guy. So we'll see how that changes over the course of this week. The safety spots, I think, are still a little bit of a work in progress. I'm kind of expecting Jordan Hancock to be that guy. a lot more against Western Kentucky. I think you, maybe end of the day, you see more snaps for Jordan Hancock than you do for Sonny Styles this weekend. One other thing that I did see them doing with Sonny Styles was this is maybe sort of a reflection of the fact that the defensive line isn't necessarily getting there in terms of just rushing for. They did some blitzing, and they did some blitzing with Styles. They did some blitzing with Tommy Eichenberg. There was one where they blitzed both Styles and Eichenberg and just kind of overloaded the right-hand side of the line of scrimmage. And that was the one where Eichenberg had the big sack, and I think forced a fumble on that one that Youngstown State recovered. But I think that has to be a little bit of a concern that you can't get there with 4 consistently, and that's against Youngstown State. So when you're playing a better offensive line, you're going to have to bring more pressure, and that then sets you up for more issues on the back end, because that's where they catch you in a blitz, and then there's fewer guys back there to defend it, and that's where you give up the big plays. And they don't want to give up the big plays, and everyone wants them to not give up big plays anymore, but they also want them to pressure the quarterback. And the best situation there is, yes, you can do that with just your front 4, except that hasn't happened yet. And I'm a little surprised that it hasn't happened yet, because we've seen JT Tuimoloau do it. We've seen Mike Hall do it. These are guys who have gotten home before, and they're just not getting home right now. So I think that has to be, especially with the adjuster safety spot that we just talked about being a little bit up in the air. That's the guy who's kind of tasked with being deeper than the deepest and keeping everything in front of them. And if that's a little bit of a concern, and you're in a spot where maybe you need to bring more pressure up front, that's going to just put more stress on that adjuster position and the rest of the safeties. So, for a team that has given up 10 points through 2 weeks, it's probably a little nitpicky. And we did this a little bit with Michigan Monday yesterday, where it's like, yeah, but they've won both games, 30 something to single digits, and they've also given up 10 points. But, these are not opponents that you should be having yeah but games against. And both Michigan and Ohio State have kind of had some yeah buts against their first couple of opponents.
Yeah, something that I jotted down goes right in line with that, because this defense on Saturday lost contain many more times than they did in the opener against Indiana, where they kept contain extremely well. And I don't know that they ever lost it maybe more than once, and they never really paid for it. This time it happened 4, 5, 6 times, and they had enough. They have more speed than Youngstown State, so they're able to keep it from going the distance. But I do wonder how much the added blitzing, because, and as I said previously, I hate the usage of seems as fact, but it seemed like they blitzed more in this game than they did against Indiana. And if I'm wrong about that, whatever. But it felt, Tom, that's better. It felt like they blitzed more this week than the previous week. And I wonder if those two things are related, the increased blitzing and the increased losing contained, because essentially you take a defender out of the picture when you add him into the scrum there. So I think that was a little bit of a concern. And it is funny, as you said, if they're giving up 5 points a game, and we're talking about the concerns, but these are 2 bad offenses that they've played. So you shouldn't be giving up many points, and they aren't. So that's great. But the fact that, as you said, the front 4, you're finding a need to blitz. That is, especially when you're doing it with Sonny, who I think should do some of it, but then he was so effective against Indiana and stretching plays out and getting to the sideline and keeping contained. You take him out of the picture, and now you're giving up a few more plays from scrimmage longer than you did the previous week against a presumably worse opponent. So I think that'll be interesting. Something interesting to talk to Jim Knowles about, just how he felt they did on keeping contained against Youngstown State.
Yeah, none of this has been a problem yet. This is all just sort of, well, when the competition gets better, this could actually be a problem. Like that's sort of the way you have to have these conversations right now, whether you're talking about Michigan or Ohio State or anyone else who hasn't really played someone with a pulse. So we will continue to monitor these situations. Boy, speaking of a situation that needs to be monitored, hey, Tony, remember when Josh Simmons, the big concern with Josh Simmons coming over from San Diego State was, boy, he seems to get called for a lot of penalties. He got called for 2 penalties, and both of the penalties were like really, really obvious penalties, which you can get away with a lot in the trenches. You think about all the uncalled holding that happens. You can't get a guy sideways right at the point of attack with no one around you. Like, you're going to get called for holding in that case. You can't rip a guy's helmet off. You're going to get called for a very obvious hands to the face penalty. Like, that's the easiest call in history. Is the guy's helmet pops off. It's like, well, it didn't happen by magic, so there was probably some sort of force applied to that helmet. And those were both really significant penalties. The first one was on 3rd and 1, and Trayanum Henderson, they ran stretch into the boundary, which doesn't always work great. And Trayanum Henderson got stopped for a loss. But, it was still 4th and 1, 1.5, something like that, maybe 2. And you could have gone for it, except then you had the holding penalty on Simmons, which Youngstown State knew Ohio State was probably going to go for it, so they accepted it, and all of a sudden it's 3rd and 11. And then we'll talk about that next play later. But that ended up kind of functionally really starting to kill that drive. And then the other one was the hands to the face that wiped out a touchdown run by Trayanum Henderson. And they ultimately got back in the end zone. But, those are two big penalties. And, you've got to get a little bit more. The first one, the holding one, he just got beat outside. He got beat outside when it was an outside run, and you can't do that. And you've got to get around that guy somehow. And you can't reach, you can't grab. That's just, you're going to get called. And he got called twice, and those were both pretty big penalties.
The left tackle wasn't the only issue that I saw on the day on the offensive line. I'll be surprised if anybody graded out a champion. Josh Fryer had one. I think it might have been 3rd and 25. I have 3rd and 25 written down here. So I'm going to assume my notes are accurate. But the left rusher, the left edge rusher, took a step outside and then went inside, and Josh Fryer never touched him. Like, he lost his balance and never touched the guy. And it gives you some concern about how things are going to go with better, faster, stronger defensive ends. That not that he's going to let everybody go untouched, but that loss of balance, it won't take much to capitalize on that, especially with stronger players who will just use that loss of balance and continue moving him in that direction. So I think that was not a great moment for Fryer. And again, when we talk about this Youngstown State game, it's pointing out the bad, because that's really the only thing that you can take from it. And if we're just talking about a couple of moments, I guess maybe they can clean that up. These are all things that they'll clean up, but it certainly gives you pause, both with Simmons, Fryer, and again, the continued trouble running the ball. And it's going to be something that Western Kentucky's defense is really bad in terms of stopping the run. So if Ohio State can't run the ball this week, then I don't know what else you can do. Sound the alarms, because they're not running it with extra blockers either. That just brings more defenders into the picture. Maybe you just have to spread things out as much as possible and rely on the lack of defenders more than the influx of blockers, because the blocking right now isn't where it needs to be.
No, it definitely isn't. And yeah, I'll be interested to see what it looks like this weekend. And what do they focus on? Last weekend, we talked about the fact that going into the game, they're going to want to throw the ball more, because they're going to want to have, the quarterbacks, as it's sort of an open quarterback competition. And we'll see what Ryan Day says Tuesday at noon and whether it remains an open quarterback competition. But, last weekend going into the game, it was, an open quarterback competition, and you wanted to see these guys run the offense, and so they were probably going to throw more. This weekend, Western Kentucky's going to throw the ball enough, and they want to keep the clock moving and get their number of possessions up and their number of snaps up. So, are they going to still throw the ball more, or are they going to we need to work on the run? Because I think Ryan Day, just sort of by his nature, as a former quarterback coach, wants to throw the ball, and when he gets one way or the other, it is almost always pass happy. So I'm guessing you're not going to see a ton of running, but it would be interesting to see if they decided just to buckle down and try to run against a not very good run defense, whether they could do it. Because I don't know whether I think they could. And that's you're going to have to run the ball against Notre Dame at some point, I think. I think with as much as Ryan Day has talked about the clock rules and losing possessions and all that kind of stuff, it feels like he might be pressing more or leaning more into the pass now than he would maybe otherwise. So that'll be interesting to see, because I would like to see them just try and run it and see if they could run it against a bad defense, if that's just what they're trying to do. But I don't think we're going to get to see that.
I think he'll give it 2 drives of trying to establish the run. And if things are going great, then you continue to run or play action off of it. If things aren't going great after those 2 drives, then you've got to start doing something else that works, because who knows what the score will be at that point if Western Kentucky has sort of put the pressure on. But if you try to establish the run over 2 drives and you have no points from that, I don't think Brian Day is the kind of guy that has the patience to, we'll just continue to wear on this defensive line with our offensive line and we'll eventually break something. That's not really his makeup. He wants to, let's just keep going, and let's score any way we can. It's not about necessarily the long game. It's like, I want points right now. And so if they're not able to get that with the running game early on, I think they'll quickly go to the passing game, which then takes me to something else. When they do go to the passing game, these quarterbacks, and I do believe it'll be Kyle McCord, and if it is just one guy, then you don't need to necessarily throw it as much because he'll get his work in throughout the course of the game. But these quarterbacks need to let the ball rip. They need to just, when they're throwing downfield, let it rip, because nearly all of their throws last week were underthrown, had to come back for it. Even the touchdown pass, the second touchdown pass from Kyle McCord to Marvin Harrison, he kind of hesitated, did a little double pump before finally letting it go. Saw Devin Brown, all of his deep passes. 2 of them should have been pass interference, and there's just let it rip is all I'm saying. Maybe it's some aiming or whatnot, but just have the confidence and just go and let your receivers make some plays, but also don't let 2 defenders come back into the picture for that ball.
Yeah, well, I mean, the one Devin Brown one was just like he felt like he threw it straight up in the air and Marvin Harrison needed to fair catch it. That was a really, really obvious pass interference call. There was a couple that were, I think Ohio State got hurt by missed pass interference calls, and just no one is saying that officiating is any kind of the reason that Ohio State had struggles on offense on Saturday. We just addressed several of the actual reasons we're talking about. No one is making excuses. Okay, everyone on the same page. Okay, here we go. So after the Josh Simmons penalty that turned a 3rd and 1 that got stuffed into a 4th and 2, back into a 3rd and 11, the Western Kentucky defender went like over Emeka Ibuka's back before the ball got there, and there was no call. That would have been a first down that would have extended a drive. They had Marvin Harrison in the end zone where the guy kind of like grabbed him, and they both kind of went to the ground, and then the ball was incomplete. I mean, there were a couple that were really, really pretty obvious. I mean, pretty obvious live. I don't think I talked about them on the post-game show. They were both ones that I went, oh boy, that looked like, I don't know how they missed that. And I thought, well, sometimes I like to go back before I come in guns blazing. I like to go back and actually watch and make sure, hey, I saw what I saw, and I was not, I'm looking through a camera viewfinder, so it's not always the best. Yeah, both of those were really bad missed calls. Then they had a hold on Chip Trayanum that was like, yeah, I mean, you could call a hold in a way that you could call a hold on most plays. That one wiped out a touchdown. Like you're not. Those were 3 kind of significant plays. The one on Josh Simmons where he ripped the guy's helmet off. I almost said head off. Helmet off. That would be a different penalty.
Would it?
Where we took the guy's helmet off. That one, it wiped out a touchdown, but they scored the touchdown right after that. But the one in the end zone to the 3rd and 11 one on Emeka Ibuka, that would have extended a drive. I don't think they scored a touchdown on the one where Chip Trayanum got called for the hold. I think that was the one where that was the end of that long Devin Brown drive. So, you put those 2 touchdowns on the board and it ends up 49-7. And I don't know that anyone's even thinking twice about, it's like a typical early season Ohio State game where it's like, well, they had spots where they could have done better, but they scored touchdowns on 7 of their 9 drives or whatever. If that had happened, and everyone kind of goes, yeah, okay, sure. That's just kind of what it looks like this time of year.
Yeah, I jotted something down about Chip as well, and that block. I mean, even if the defender gets away from that, he's not stopping that touchdown. So it was. I don't know that one needed to be thrown, but it's clear he's still learning to be a fullback, as we mentioned the week before, and it's going to be a process, but it's not a bad process. It's going relatively well, and they'll find more ways to use him. And I felt that one was kind of iffy. And as you said, make it 42-7, and people aren't as angry. But again, as also Tom, it's not the ref's fault that things aren't going perfectly for Ohio State. It's Youngstown State's stellar defense. Now, Tom, something else that I wanted to mention. I do not like the Fox score bug. And this I don't even pay attention to this stuff. But when you're trying to rewatch this game and that score bug is covering up 2 receivers and 2 defensive backs, what the heck are we doing? I mean, that thing is out there. It's like they went and got it at like Hobby Lobby. And it's like, they should also say live, laugh, love, because it is that big and glaring. It doesn't need to take up the entire wall.
Well, and then they have the old ESPN2 like script graphics that they use at times. It's like, so which Fox executive let his 14-year-old kid pick the new font for the scoreboard? Yeah, I get it. I guess you're trying to be a little different and not have it look like your NFL coverage, and okay, but what if it looked like not that? That would be better. There's just score bugs are. I don't know that I've ever seen one that I'm like, wow, that is incredible. It is the design on this is magnificent. It should win an award. It's just like, give me the information and stay out of my way. That's all I'm looking for. I would like to know score for each team, time remaining, quarter. If you can communicate timeouts remaining, like that's a good thing to have on there. I don't need like headshots of players. I don't need like big script mascot names. Like, just give me the basic information, tuck it away in a part of the screen where it's not going to be covering up players, covering up stuff that's happening on the screen. It's great that we don't actually have to watch games on TV normally, because there's no score bug in real life. I do, the only thing that I miss watching IRL is the yellow first down line, especially watching from an end zone, because it's like you're looking and you're trying to do the geometric calculation on, okay, well, it looks like he's 5 yards past the line, but of course the angle to the sticks is different than the angle to him, so is he actually across it or not? I miss the yellow first down line watching live. Other than that, no, I don't really need any of the other crap.
Yeah, I only notice it if it's bad, and I don't. Maybe it would be better if they just superimpose it on the field. Like, take it, bring the layers of the field up, and then push the score bug itself onto the field, like the first down marker, so it's not blocking your view of any of the players. But that is much too big. A couple other things, last things for me, Tom, is that I thought Travion Henderson looked explosive and decisive, especially up the middle when there was something for him to go to. And then maybe people shouldn't throw at Denzel Burke as much. Maybe now, maybe that may all change. You go out the window against Western Kentucky, but to this point, why are you throwing at this guy?
Yeah, he's been real good. There was the one in the end zone where he, almost ran the route for the receiver and then boxed out really nicely. He, had possession. Just, no one was, they talk about like the quarterback throwing it where no one else can get it. Like, Denzel Burke positioned himself where no one else could get it. That was his ball. He went up for it, got it, brought it down. Like, that was a really nice play to kill one of the other best possessions for Youngstown State. But yeah, he's been, he looks like he's on sort of that traditional Ohio State corner trajectory where you see them some. He was a little bit. He kind of cut the line as a true freshman to be out there due to some other injuries, but he looked okay and was playing as a true freshman. It was like, anything you do as a true freshman, it's like, wow, that's great job. You're any mistake is kind of excusable as a true freshman, and anything you do is like, remarkable. Second year was, I think he was better. He was okay. He was, the whole secondary was banged up. So that was kind of a little bit of a lost year back there. But, the third year, that's typically where you see, okay, this guy takes a little bit of a leap and gets himself in the conversation to be a first round pick. And I have not seen any kind of mock draft, so I have no idea where he would be. But, he's probably, he is having that good third season where it's like, I bet this is his last season in Columbus because he's looking pretty good. He's draft eligible, has the track record, has the film, I think, over the years that, with a good season, this is probably his last season in Columbus.
One last thing. I think the way they're running the running backs, I don't know how much of an opportunity these guys are getting to build a rhythm themselves, because you go in and then you sit for 2 drives or whatever. I wonder if at some point that gets shortened. I don't know that it will, but it can't be easy for these guys. And I think we actually talked about this after the game, but it can't be easy to get 5 or 6, 7 carries and have to be at your best and have to get a feel for what you're seeing out there when you're not out there enough to get a feel for it. So I wonder if at some point that shrunk down to a more manageable situation. But Tom, anything else you got?
Yeah, just, on the running backs, the idea that they were going to play 5 running backs, I think it all sounded great during fall camp. And then when you look at, hey, they're not getting quite as many snaps and they're worried about the clock, so they're running the ball less. Even juggling 3, like you said, that's going to be a lot. That's probably more than they can reasonably do. So, yeah, I think you're going to see two guys getting carries at some point relatively soon. And that's and that's going to be tough because if you're the 4th or 5th guy on that rotation, you're really not getting touches. I don't know that Dallin Hayden or Chip Evan Pryor, thank you, goodness. I could picture him. I'm like, number 21, North Carolina. I could get there. My brain was going to get there eventually. Evan Pryor. Those 2 guys are just, I don't think either of them has had a carry this year. And you're through 2 of the games where you thought, okay, well, they'll certainly get carries there. So, yeah, that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out over the course of the year. Because I'm sure that's frustrating for guys who have to, have played in the past or came in with the, the expectation they were going to be playing and then are really not playing at all right now. So, but, job one is win the game and make the offense as functional as it can and as explosive as it can because, better competition is coming soon.
Absolutely. In fact, that comes this week with Western Kentucky and then Notre Dame and then many more after that as the conference slate really gets going. So I want to thank you all for tuning in. As always, please find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Become a member. That is a great way to support this show and other shows on the network, including Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning with Tom Orr, Kevin's Big Me Kickoff, you got Mark Givler's Skull Session Recruiting Podcast, new stuff. We've got Tyler Shoemaker and Kelly Ford's show, which is
Calculated Risk.
Calculated Risk. I always have trouble with it. I know it's something math, and you know how my brain is when it comes to math. We don't want it. But that's, more of a power ratings look, and it's an interesting show. So check that one out as well. And of course, Garrett Seawright with the Daily Huddle show that you can find on our network as well. So I want to thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.